Okay, now I have all of my oil pastel details done. My black outlines are all set on those first lines that I made, and I'm ready to fill in the big spaces with my watercolors. When I'm ready for watercolors, I have a placemat underneath my artwork so that I don't get watercolors on the table. And then I have my tray with my set of watercolors, my water cup, and my brush for my partner and I to share. When I get them, if I'm the first person using them, then I would have to give all of my watercolors a drink. Remember, I want to do this while the water is clean so that my colors aren't going to mix up. When I get this back at the end of class, I should still have all these nice bright colors, not brown, 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 because your color mixing happens on your paper, not here on the palette. So if I'm the first person getting them, then I need to give all of these a drink. And just to be a little bit quicker, I already gave most of these a drink, but remember that whenever I'm doing this, it's just a few drops of water into each pan, and I'm hanging out up above like a helicopter. So I don't actually touch the paints. I'm just hanging up above, letting the water drip into it and fill up that pan. Now, once all my watercolors are wet, I'm ready to paint. When I start painting, remember that quite a lot of us have done this before, where we've had watercolors and oil pastels on the paper. And when I put watercolors with my oil pastels, the oil pastels are going to push away or resist the watercolors. Now, if I get a spot where you can see how the oil pastels want to kind of push back that blue paint there, but if I get a spot where I put way too much water over top of my oil pastels, they can't push all of that back. So if I have a spot like that, what I can do to clean that up is to take my brush, clean it off, and then swipe it here on the edge of my cup. So just pulling it along there. And then I can take my brush that's a little bit dry and just soak up some of that watercolor over top of where my oil pastel is. It's a good way to get rid of watercolors that I don't want. And then in spaces like up here, so I clean my brush before I go into my paint. Spaces like up here, wherever I have my white pastel, it'll push that away. And then if I want to make a color a little bit lighter, I can clean my brush, and just using clear water, I can go over it and make that color a little bit lighter. I can mix colors together, making sure I'm thinking about colors that will mix well together. So I know red and orange are next to each other on the color wheel, so I know that they'll mix well together. And I'm going to work on filling up my whole painting with my watercolors and allowing those oil pastels to resist or push away. Remember that every time my paintbrush touches my paper, doesn't even matter if I'm going back into the same color, I'm going to clean out my brush. It's just good practice, and it'll help me remember that every time I go back from my paper to my paints, I should stop in the water cup first, and that's going to help keep my paints nice and clean. Okay, now I have my finished piece of artwork based on Sandra Silverswig. So once I'm done with my painting, all my colors stayed nice and bright. The only thing I didn't really kind of like was that black. It went in just a little bit too dark. So that's why I washed my brush out, and I went into my purple, making sure I washed it out in between. Once I'm finished, then my artwork gets picked up with two hands like a lunch tray, and it will go over to the drying rack. And then if my partner's still working, then I would keep out my oil pastel, or not my oil pastels, my watercolors. But if we're both finished with it, then our water cup can go over to the sink. And these watercolors, remember, they need to stay flat and they need to stay open so that they're able to dry out. So don't close them and then carry them around sideways. They should stay flat like a lunch tray also, so that they can get put away correctly and they're ready for the next class.